Hello everyone, my name is Onza, and welcome back to another episode of Journey through Norse Mythology. Now today we are going to talk about the Well of Wisdom and how Odin gained its knowledge. However, before we delve into details about the nature of this well, let's refresh our memory with a quote we used in our video about Yggdrasil. Quote, "Three routes there are that three ways run, neath the ash tree Yggdrasil. Neath the first lives hell, neath the second the frost giants, neath the third are the lands of men." End quote. As I said in the video about Yggdrasil, underneath each of Yggdrasil's roots that are anchored in the cosmos is some kind of spring or a body of water of important significance. Underneath the roof in Helheim is the river Hvergelmir, that is possibly the primal river of the universe from where all the other rivers originate. About the route that runs into the lands of men, those of course being Midgard, nothing can be said with certainty. It is possible that under this route lies the well of Urt, the Spring of Fate, where the Norns have their dwelling place. However, it cannot be confirmed for sure, so take this just as a mere speculation. But today, it is the route that runs into Jotunheim that interests us. Or more importantly, the spring the route drinks from. And quoting another source can help us find out more about it. Quote, "But under the second route, which extends to the frost giants, is the well of Mime, wherein knowledge and wisdom are concealed. The owner of the well hight Mimir. He is full of wisdom, for he drinks from the well with the Gjallarhorn. Allfather once came there and asked for a drink from the well, but he did not get it before he left one of his eyes as a pledge." End quote. Let's first talk about Mimir. Mimir is a rather obscure character in Norse mythology. First off, there is no clear information about who he really is. Some sources mention him as being a giant, some sources mention him being a god, some sources mention him being just a head, and also being a guardian of the Well of Wisdom. And with all that information, let's now see if we can find out who he really is in the end. We've already encountered Mimir in the aftermath of the Aesir-Vanir war, where he played an important role. As you may recall, Mimir was chosen alongside Heinir as one of the hostages to be traded with the Vanir in exchange for Freya, her brother Frey, and their father Njord. This was to ensure lasting peace before the two groups of gods. So this clearly means that Mimir is one of the gods, right? Well, it's not that simple. What really happened was that the Aesir tricked the Vanir as they traded Heinir with them under the false claim that he was a wise and capable ruler, more than fitting to fill in Njord's place as the head of the Vanir. But we already know that this was not true in the slightest, as Heinir, even though being strong and handsome, was very much a simpleton and an incompetent ruler. That was the reason that Aesir sent Mimir with Heinir, for he was the wisest of them all, and they thought that as long as Mimir stayed with Heinir and told him what to do and say when something was required of him, their ruse wouldn't be revealed. However, in some time Vanir realized that without Mimir by his side, Heinir was as clueless as they get, and that they have been fooled by the Aesir. Still, the Vanir knew that renewing the conflict between the two groups of gods would only bring more death and destruction, and so instead they killed Mimir and sent his head to Odin as a revenge for tricking them. Odin wept at the loss of his advisor and a good friend, but with the help of sorcery he brought Mimir's head back to life and sought its guidance and wisdom many times. Okay, so far we know that Mimir was one of the gods, and now he is a head, right? Well, as much as that would make everything easy, there are several references clearly pointing to Mimir being a giant. This still doesn't exclude him from being a friend of the gods, as there are many examples of giants the gods are actually on good terms with. Furthermore, it does not mean Mimir isn't a god, as there are giants that were accepted among the gods, like for example Skadi, the giantess who married the god Njord. So I bet now you are properly confused as to the nature of Mimir, right? Who is he? Is he a giant? A god? A head? He can't be all of those things at the same time, right? Or can he? Well, let's see if this quote can help us answer that. In an account of his famous deeds, Odin mentions this, quote, "I learned 9 spells from the famous son of Bolthorn, the father of Besla." End quote. Now, Odin mentions this among his 2 great feats that granted him wisdom, one being the learning of the runes, which he mentions before this part, and the other being his gain of mead of poetry, which he talks about after this part. Now the last major source of Odin's wisdom that remains is the sip he received from the Well of Wisdom, which is guarded by Mimir. But let's further analyze this quote. If you remember back to our first video, you will know that the giantess Besla is the mother of Odin, and so logically the son of Besla's father would be Odin's uncle. And even though we have no confirmation about the identity of this character, it is presumed that this could in fact be Mimir, which would then make him the son of Bolthorn and in relation Odin's uncle. Knowing all this, I put forward the following speculation. Mimir was Odin's uncle, a giant, and because he is the guardian of the Well of Wisdom and drinks from it daily, he always had valuable counsel and advice to share with Odin, and that's why Odin valued his guidance and accepted him among the other gods of Asgard even though he was a giant. After Mimir's death at the hands of the Vanir, Odin brought his head back to life and returned it to the Well of Wisdom, where he would often visit his uncle in search of advice and discussion about secrets and mysteries of the cosmos. Now, this is purely a speculation, but I think it fits in with what we know of Mimir. It is entirely possible that the god Mimir and the guardian of the well Mimir might be completely different characters, as there are many examples of characters and beings in Norse mythology who are unrelated to each other, yet still share the same name. However, in this case I find it hard to believe, as all versions of Mimir depict him as being highly knowledgeable and a wise character, as well as a friend or at least a character in some way tied to Odin, which would seem like a pretty big coincidence to me. So our speculation leads us to believe that in the end all depictions of Mimir's character could actually be true, and now that we have talked about who Mimir really is, or at least speculated about it, let's talk about what else we know about him. Mimir is the guardian of the Well of Wisdom, located underneath the root of Yggdrasil that runs into Jotunheim. This Well of Wisdom is a spring of untold secrets and knowledge that grants anyone who drinks from it wisdom beyond imagining. Mimir himself drinks from the well each day with his drinking horn named Gjallarhorn, and that's the reason for his incredible intellect and knowledge. Out of all the characters in Norse mythology, Mimir is definitely among the wisest. And today, we'll talk about the story of how Odin sought the Well of Wisdom in an attempt to gain access to its knowledge. Once again, I have to warn you, this story is nowhere told in any great detail, and so the one you will hear today is my interpretation, with some minor details added to make the story feel more alive and complete. However, all of my innovations are still based on the sources we already have, and I'm just filling in the blanks in the story with my own speculation and imagination. With that out of the way, let's get to it. After Odin gained the power and secrets of the runes, Mimir told him about yet another bountiful source of wisdom, this time the one he had quite the experience with. The Well of Wisdom lay deep in the heart of Jotunheim, and Odin had to put his talents and spells to good use, as the number of giants he and Mimir slipped by on their way numbered in the thousands. But after a long and strenuous journey, Odin finally arrived there where Mimir had guided him. A small grove, thickly overgrown by trees, hid the Well of Wisdom from sight of anyone but those who knew it was there. As Odin set Mimir's head at the side of the well, he gazed into the sparkling waters. The water radiated with power and knowledge beyond imagining, beckoning to Odin to come and claim it.
"If it is a drink from my well you seek,"
said the wise Mimir,
"you'd better remember that no knowledge comes without sacrifice."
Mimir gazed into the waters of the well. Sadness emanated on his face.
"I sought wisdom once, just as you do now, but I was too greedy and wanted more than I was offered."
Odin listened to his uncle and friend with curiosity yet slight uneasiness.
"Wisdom doesn't come cheap, my friend, especially if you crave more than you can handle,"
he continued.
"You should never be too wise. Wise man's heart is seldom happy if he is truly wise."
Grim silence fell over the two before Mimir laughed heartily.
"But I know I'm not going to convince you, Odin. I see in your eyes the same lust for knowledge that once drove me. You can drink deep, but one sip is all you shall receive."
Odin nodded and leaned over the well.
"And your sacrifice?"
Mimir asked, stopping Odin in his tracks.
"The contents of this well are nothing but plain water for those who are not willing to offer something in return for his wisdom."
Odin pondered for a long while, his eyes reflecting in the waters of the well. He then reached out to one of his eyes, and with a grunt he ripped it out of its socket. He then held it in his clenched fist over the well. I offer a part of my sight in exchange for greater insight," he uttered, and dropped the eye into the well. The water glowed brightly when Odin's eye fell in. The spring accepted his sacrifice.
"Then take this and drink deep."
Mimir's eyes flicked towards the side of the well where sat a magnificent drinking horn. Odin took the horn and filled it to the brim with the waters from the well, and taking a deep breath, he drank the contents of the horn with one big gulp. In that moment, his mind expanded and grew, revealing to him what he never even imagined. The mysteries of the cosmos, 9 spells of long-forgotten magic, and secrets of all the 9 realms. Yet, with all that knowledge, he also received something he might not have wished for. Visions of fire and death filled Odin's mind. A tree engulfed in flames, world trapped in darkness and never-ending winter, and a field of battle stretching from east to west as far as the eye could see. With a cry of pain, Odin woke himself from his apocalyptic vision, gasping for air. For the first time in his life, mortal fear gripped his heart. What was that?" he asked with a raspy breath.
"Bits and pieces,"
Mimir answered sadly.
"Seeing the whole picture is a price for knowledge."
Was that the future? Odin breathed out.
"It's best to not know your fate beforehand. You live happier if you don't."
"Do not lecture me, uncle!" Odin shouted in anger. "If you know what fate awaits us, then tell me." Mimir's face was cold and stern.
"No."
"Then I will find out for myself," Odin retorted and took a step closer to the well, intending to drink from it again.
"I said no."
In that moment, Mimir's eyes lit up with cold blue light. His voice was calm but stern, and the raw power Odin felt emanated from his uncle made him take a step back.
"If you seek to know your fate, you'll find no answers here."
Odin felt intimidated by his uncle's show of power, yet his desire to find out what his vision meant made him act out of foolishness and anger. "Then I shall have to find my answers somewhere else." And with that, Odin left Mimir and his well behind. On that day, he took away more than just untold secrets, 9 forgotten spells, and the Gjallarhorn he didn't even realize he was still holding in his hand, but also the sinister feeling that something was coming, and he was going to find out what. We have no clue as to what new spells Odin learned from the Well of Wisdom, nor what mysteries he received with his drink. What we do know is that Odin would find what fate awaited him in the cosmos, though if his discovery would do him any good is a story for another time. But this would be all for today, and I bid you all farewell until next time.